Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader. Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. It's David Horsager. I have a very special friend and guest with me today. He has become a friend. He was the lead solo pilot of the Blue Angels. He's a fellow at Stanford University's graduate school, Sloan School. He is, he went to the War College, Naval War College, the Academy. But I'm telling you, 18 inches apart, flying those F-18s, that's unbelievable. Among other things, welcome to the show, John Foley.
David, I'm deeply glad to be here. And as you know, that message means something very special to me. And I hope by the end of the show, everybody knows what that means. But I'm grateful to be on your show. You are an amazing person and you're reaching so many people. I'm very honored.
Well, I'll tell you what, if anybody on this show over the last however many interviews aligns with trust, it's you. And you and I even say it in our business, we want to know people that are the same off stage as they are on stage. And you're amazing on stage, but you're even more amazing off stage. He also is the author of Fearless Success. We're going to talk about that just a little bit and some other things. He's had clients from Mercedes to IBM. And, John, let's get into it a little bit. I mean, I've got to jump to, first of all, amazing story, family, life, and all this, but what is it like? You're at Mach point, 6.5, and you're 18 inches away from the other airplane. What was that like leading the Blue Angels?
Well, first off, I wasn't the leader. I was the lead solo pilot, but when you're flying that close to another jet, let me tell you, David, you can see the cracks in the paint of the aircraft next to you. Can you imagine this? I mean, how many of us have driven even close enough to a car to see the cracks of the paint? Doing this at 500 miles per hour, like you said, 0.65 Mach, right? And I'll tell you what, number one, it's because I'm just reliving it. The little hairs are standing up on the back of my neck. The hairs on my arm, you can see that. They're starting to tingle because I realized what it felt like to be that close. And the whole key is what you talk about. It's all about trust.
So how do you do it? How do you build trust? I'm fascinated by many things you do. Everything from debriefing to, to how you built trust from the beginning. But how do you, you've got, how many planes in the air generally at once?
There's 6 of us.
6 of us. And of course, you've had all this experience ahead of that. But this is kind of toward the end of your career, right? You're a Blue Angel solo lead pilot. Tell us what that was like to even, you jump on, give us the little 2-minute story here of that process to building trust before you're then flying 18 inches apart at 500 miles an hour.
Yeah, great. Let me give you a quick background for everybody. So, I was a naval fighter pilot, flew off aircraft carriers, was in the movie Top Gun. By the way, Top Gun's coming out again, right? So my buddies did all the new flying, but I did the old flying. Then you become an instructor pilot, and that's where we get our Blue Angels from. Usually the instructor ranks something like Top Gun. They call it the Fleet Replacement Squadron, these other areas, right? Because we want somebody who's not only highly skilled and gifted at what they do. That's just a given, right? We need people who are going to fit. The chemistry has to be right. The purpose has to be right. Why are they there? I call it a purpose larger than self. It's not even about the flying. It's really about inspiring greatness in other individuals. When I look and I see the little kids' eyes, when I go to the crowd line afterwards, that's my real job. I just happen to be doing airplanes to inspire somebody. So anyhow, the idea of the selection process is we want the right people in the right seats, the right team, right? And go ahead.
How do you figure out chemistry? Like, this is something like people are listening, right? Leaders are listening like, man, I thought that salesperson was the right person. I thought that CEO was right. And what do we find? I just read something recently that people get hiring wrong about with and without assessments and all these other things, right? They try all these things. You got a hiring assessment, you got this, and yet people get hiring wrong about 50% of the time.
Yeah. Well,
so how do you figure out chemistry for something like this?
Yeah. And I'm in the same boat in my company here. I've done some great hires and some that didn't work out. And so here's the key, right? What we did on the Blues is we hired slow. right? And you've heard that a lot, right? Hire slow, fire fast, whatever. But the point is here is that it's about a year-long process. So we were always looking ahead, right? If you were going to replace one of the 6 pilots, by the way, we replace 3 of them every year. So how would you like this challenge, leaders out there? Half of your leadership team, half of your key people, you have to replace every year, because it's not that they're leaving or you're firing them. That's what we call a rotation. In the Navy, every 3 years, you get a new job. In the Blue Angels, it's every 2 years. So we're constantly bringing in new people into the dynamics of the organization. That's why your training is so important. See, the way you do this is you build a culture, and you have this culture of excellence, and it sustains any individual. But back to your training question real quick is, we do the standard stuff, right? We actually ask for people to come to us. We don't go out to them. So that's an interesting difference, right? The Blue Angels have a brand. So people want to be there. So they're coming to us, right? Then we do the typical application process, 3 letters of recommendations from your commanding officers. What you're really looking for, though, is that's just getting in the door, right? Do they have the background? What we really selected on was we actually invited people to come to our air shows. These are the applicants. They actually get to sit in on the briefs, not the debriefs, okay? We can talk about that, why that's different. All right. And we're trying to show them, this is what you're signing up for. Okay. This is the real deal behind the scenes. Right. And then we get to observe them. And what I'm trying to observe is, of course, they're going to treat me well, or any of the other pilots. I want to know, how are they treating the crowd line? How are they treating the kids? How are they treating my troops? And so we're observing them. At the end of the day, what we do, David, is we bring finalists into Pensacola. We have a week-long formal interview process where we get to know them, they get to know us. And then at the end of the day, we vote. Okay. And you're voting on your heart, not just your head. Of course, if we have what we call a no way, which means if somebody just doesn't connect, they can call a no way on somebody, and then they're not going to be on the team. But that's very rare, because you don't want to do that to somebody. So what you're really looking for is what's in their heart, not just what's in their head. Are they aligned with our core values? And the answer to your question is, it takes a little time, and you got to get to know them. But I hire on intuition more than on surveys or that other stuff.
Right. Well, here's the problem we have today. We could talk all day, and everybody would be on the edge of their seat listening to you and all the wisdom you have and all the amazing experiences you have. So we're going to have you back. I've never brought anybody back, but I'm making a commitment today. Okay. We've got to have Commander Foley back. Hey, let's jump, because you touched on it. I wasn't going to go there, but everybody get the book, Fearless Success. John Foley, here it is. But let's go to page 20 really quick. This quick, just a teaser overview of this 4-step process, because you've continued now in your companies. You speak all over the world. You train all over the world. 5 continents and 20 countries or more, or whatever. You've got this process of belief, brief, trust, and debrief. We can't go into the whole book, but I was fascinated by this process because, when we have the right frameworks, we start to build trust. We start to be able to be more consistent. Give us a little, you call it the Diamond Performance Framework, that was inspired in part by what you did at the Blue Angels. Tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had the rare privilege, David, to speak to over 1,500 organizations now. Over 1 million people have been inspired by this. And that book is basically my experience as a Blue Angel, but after I went to Stanford Business School, and after I worked with a bunch of companies, probably over 1,000 of them, I said, what's the connection? What worked in this very elite, high performance organization? And how do you transfer that back into the real world, right? So where it really came from, David, was I remember being in strategic management theory at Stanford, and the professor was talking about the vision, plan, execute, feedback loop. Vision, plan, execute, feedback, right? And I said, okay, I get that, right? But I realized that in the highest performing teams and organizations, we actually do a little bit more than that. That's the fundamentals, right? And so what that framework is that you showed everybody is the next level, right? And what it is instead of about vision, I like to talk about beliefs. How do you get commitment and buy-in to a vision? Because that's what we want as leaders. You want people committed and bought in. So where are our beliefs? Sometimes we skip that step. Then the next one, the brief, what I call it a cadence of execution, which is this brief debrief process, right? But really the brief is not about planning. It's about preparation and focus. So how do you bring your A game every single day? How do you get teams aligned through the center point concept? How do you get yourself? And I've been talking a lot about lately personal mastery because, we've been through a lot of challenges. All of us are, right? How do you wake up every morning? What's the rituals you do? How do you get, yourself completely focused like I did on the Blue Angels? But then the key is, and what you talk about so well, and by the way, I learn from you every single day. I love what you're doing. The key to execution is trust. You know that, and I know that. And so that's the part of the framework where you go from the being focused and then into execution through high trust contracts. By the way, I call them high trust contracts or covenants. What I found at the highest level for high trust, it's not the written ones. It's not the SOP. It's not all that kind of stuff. It's verbal and nonverbal agreements. I'll give you one real quick, David. Your people will be blown away. Lead solo pilot, Thumper, and myself. I'm the lead. Thumper's my opposer. We come at each other at 1,000 miles per hour closer, cross within a wingspan. If we're 1 second off, we're going to miss by 2 football fields. And you know how we did that? Was with verbal trust agreements. Yes, we had an SOP. Yes, we practiced. Yes, we trained. But at the end of the day, I told Thumper every day I looked him in the eye or we got on the phone, if there's virtual now. I said, Thumper, you can count on me. I'm going to count on you. So I'll be on the flight line. I won't be, 5 foot left or 5 foot right. The flight line, by the way, is not the runway. It's the inboard edge. I'll make the timing corrections. I'll give you the command to execute a full stick deflection roll. You, my teammate, have one job. Miss me. That's it. Biggest game of chicken you ever played, but it wasn't, David, because we had this discipline and focus. And that's why what you're teaching and what we can do out there is how do you create high trust environments? How do you create high trust companies? And then once you have that trust and you're executing, the fourth facet of that framework is the debrief, which I think is the most important part because that's the learning loop. That's where we go back in the room and we talk about not only what went well, but what we could do better. And we reestablish beliefs and trust, and it's a spiraling up process.
Hey, it's Ann with the Trust Edge team here. As you know, we are passionate about helping you and your team perform at your best. And that's why David wrote his new book, Trusted Leader. This true-to-life parable follows the story of a CEO who uncovers the root issue threatening his organization's success. And in the back half of the book, David provides a roadmap for even how to solve those root issues. Get Trusted Leader for your team, your organization, or even just for yourself at trustedleaderbook.com.
By the way, I want to touch on this debrief process because I'm so impressed by it because it seems like there's such a humility in this. You look at Top Gun, it's like the high ego, we're the top guns, blah, blah, blah. But you come in, there's a humility of saying, hey, I did this wrong. I admit my mistakes. We need to do this differently. And I think I just also read something in the midst of the pandemic where doctors are going to, or at least in some institution, going to learning from this process because a lot of doctors, they're afraid of lawsuits, right? So what do? Yep. They don't admit mistakes. How come, you sewed that person up with an extra scalpel in? Well, I'm not going to admit that. Now I'm going to get, insurance, whatever. So an insurance claim. So how do we make safe places so when people debrief, they can admit so that for the good of all, so people actually learn from mistakes instead of keep sewing another scalpel in someone after they have heart surgery, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, David. Actually, we're working a lot in the healthcare space these days. The good news is it's not as bad as what you just mentioned. Okay, but the key is because that's kind of obvious, right?
Right, of course.
And that stuff happens. But what you're mentioning is really critical, and it's not only in healthcare, but in every organization. So what I like to say is there's 5 dynamics that you need to have in order to have an effective debrief, okay, which is your learning loop, which is going to make you the best company you can be, right, and your best people. The first is, and you mentioned it, you need a safe environment. And when I mean a safe environment, I'm not just talking a physically safe environment. Heck, you and I know there's all kinds of PPP and all that, the PPE and all the protections that we're doing. I'm talking more about a psychologically safe environment. So that's built on respect. So my first pillar is respect, okay, on the safe environment. The second one is what you mentioned, and it's humility. But I like to call it check your ego at the door. Okay. Because what we said on the Blue Angels and in any high performance organization is, of course, you're good. We wouldn't have hired you, right? It's not about you. It's about we. All right. So I don't care who's right or wrong. I want the best result for, in this case, the patient or the organization. So humility is key. That's one of our hiring, by the way, qualities. We're looking for that. All right. The third one is openness and honesty. And so I call that lay it on the table. So I want an environment where you can have these open and honest communications, where you're not fear-based and afraid. The fourth one is the accountability piece, but I like to move that to personal responsibility. And I say you need an own it and fix it mentality. And that's the ownership mentality that says, I'm not just going to work in my silo. I'm going to own the outcome. And that means I have to integrate with everybody. But David, so those are the first four, and that's great. But the fifth one is the most critical one. And that's glad to be here, by the way. You need a culture of gratitude. That is what changes this from, which sometimes can be a negative process, because you are looking at what could we do better? You are identifying small things before they become big things. But when you do this within what I call glad to be here, which is this gratefulness, this appreciation, then it becomes a really positive experience. And David, that glad to be here debrief, that is going to change the world. And that's my passion. I want to get this out to every organization we can, because that's what's going to change the dial. And that's what's going to impact people and make it a spiraling up process.
How do you do that? How do you cultivate? We could talk about this on anything, accountability, responsibility, all this, but yeah. How do you help create a glad to be here? I mean, I feel like, it's almost hiring right there too, because some people don't seem to be glad to be anywhere. I'm grateful. We have a relatively new employee, and she yesterday was just singing, "I'm glad to be here," or something like that. So but she brings this positive, like, "Hey, I like to be here. I'm bringing positive." This fifth point that you have, the most important, you say, it's like that people feel like they want to be there, but how do you cultivate that? How do you is there something you can do or we can do, or is it just all in the hiring people that are going to be glad to be there?
No, it's both. I think it's three things. First, Gandhi said it best, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. So number one, any leader out there that we're talking to, it's not about out there, it's about in here, right? Am I glad to be here? Do I exude that? Every day, do I wake up? I wake up and I have a morning routine. I do a gratitude wake up every single morning. Okay. Do I exude that I love my job? I'm making a difference in people's lives. So number one, it always starts inward, right? And number two, though, is then you have to build the culture. So the answer is always culture, right? And that is, what is the culture of your organization? And anytime you bring new people in, and we're bringing 2 new people in, just like you did, there's the standard. I remember at Stanford again, but this, everyone knows this is the forming, storming, norming, performing thing, right? Okay. And so, so we're reforming. There's going to be some storming because people are reselling in. What are we doing? I want that new energy. Okay. We're going to start to norm. This is not only how we do it. And that's on the Blue Angels is critical, is I show that there's a way to do this. It's not, hypothetical. And then you get into the performing thing. So I guess what I like to say, David, and what we do when we work with our clients, first thing I got to do is paint the picture. You got to paint the picture of what this looks like. What does a high performance, excellent, trusting culture look like? And fortunately, I've got video from when I was on the team, and we're not only talking about flying, but we go into these briefs, we go into the debriefs, and you get to see those words come to life. And now people go, wait a minute, these are these, Top Gun, Blue Angel pilots, and look how humble they are. Look at that guy just admitted that mistake. That why would he do that? Why would she do that? And so you paint the picture, then we got to activate it within every organization, because there's always that bridge. How can you make it real to them? And then here's the fun part. Then you sustain it. And it's a growing, learning organization, just like you teach every single time.
Hey, tell me about this. You mentioned your gratitude wake up. What's that look like?
Oh, for me, it's simple. Okay. So I'll just give you this morning, right? So very first thing I've done is I've trained my brain to wake up happy. I mean, how cool is that, right? I mean, how cool is that I wake up happy every single day, and the rate you can do this, you can actually train your brain. We know that there's plasticity and all these kinds of things. So here, it's very simple, 3 steps. Very first thing I do when I wake up is I say, what am I grateful for in the present moment? So for me today, I'm home. I'm in Sun Valley. I'm actually right after this is done taping, I'm jumping on an airplane and going to a client event. I'm glad the live events are really kicking off now. But I'm just, number one, I'm home with my wife. We got a new dog. By the way, we just rescued a new Rhodesian Ridgeback, and she's awesome, right? So what I do is I check into my own heart and say, what am I grateful for in the present moment? And sometimes that's just being alive, Then what I do is I go back. Here's a really kind of cool technique. I go back 24 hours and I say, what happened yesterday that I have something to be grateful for? And I actually review my day in my head, right? Now I'm doing this while I'm laying down or in the shower. You can do this at any time, right? And very quickly I say, oh, yesterday, hey, we just brought on Russ, our new team member. We had a great call with him and the onboarding is going well. Had this great call with this client, about how we're going to actually implement our teachings. And then I thought more about, but I went outside. We paddleboarded. I took my wife. It was her birthday yesterday or 2 days ago. And so we went up to this lake and paddleboard. But here's the deal. I'm actually reliving the feeling in my heart, right? I'm trying to relive that experience. And we had this beautiful dinner with some friends last night. And it's more about giving than receiving, right? So then the third step, very quickly, David, is go forward in your day and think about others, not just yourself. So I thought about you. I said, in about 5 hours, I'm going to have the rare privilege. And by the way, I think it's a privilege to be with you and your audience, to share that with people. I just want to show up with my best self. And then I got to do a fun thing. I got to sign 120 books here right before our call because I've got an event. And every time I sign a book, I say thank you to myself in my head, that I'm just grateful. Thank you to this person. And that's it. I do that every single morning. Usually it takes me about 4 or 5 minutes, but I call it my glad to be here wake up. And, it changes. You watch. Don't believe me. Anyone who's out there, just try it and you watch how it changes your life.
Hey, it's Sam from the Trust Edge team. Most training and development initiatives don't last or even solve the root issue hindering your organization. That's where Trust Edge coaching certification comes in. Trust Edge coaches are equipped with a suite of tools to identify, benchmark, and close gaps in trust for good. Because when you solve the real issue, you get measurable results in a culture where people actually want to make an impact. So whether you're a coach with your own clients or a leader training people inside your organization, check out trustedgecoaching.com and see how you can start solving the root issue and get lasting results in your business. And now back to the show.
Glad to be here, wake up. I love it. Speaking of that, I see, that was a key example of what I'm going to ask next, but I'm just thinking about the great leaders I'm around. They tend to have routines like this, that routine. They tend to have great consistency. You're leading a lot of others. You're an example to many, many, many others. What other things do you do as a routine to stay healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, maritally? What are some other routines you have in the midst of your crazy schedule?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's not just that wake up. That takes me 4 or 5 minutes. I hit my knees. I pray. That's the next thing. I jump out of bed. I'm always jumping out of bed with my left foot first because it tells me that to remind myself today's not normal. Today's magical, right? Every day I believe has the opportunity to be magical. Then I go outside. So the very first thing I do, I put on the teapot, and then while it's boiling, I go outside and I do a physical routine. And it's very quick. It takes me about 5 to 7 minutes. And it's a routine that I'm happy to show you or your people someday, but it involves a Navy SEAL workout with this yoga and stretching routine, right? And so I do this routine and I can knock it out in 7 minutes. So there's no excuse not to do it, right? I can actually knock it out in 4 minutes. So there's no excuse not to do it, right? But it gets my energy. So there's the mind and the body that I'm trying to connect here, right? And then, like you said, I have a lot of routines I do through through the day. I check in with my team. We have Monday morning briefings, and that's about an hour meeting where we're aligning. We're getting priorities set. Every day we have a very quick stand-up meeting, a check-in, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then Friday is our debrief. And that's the most powerful day. We take about 90 minutes, but it's the most joyful because we're celebrating our victories. We're also addressing challenges that had came up, and we're getting ready for the next week. So that's a very structured routine that works incredibly well with any organization, and you can adapt it, right? And then when it comes to my spirituality and personal life, David, I was just doing a webinar with this organization. You and I were talking, we've done 63 weeks in a row with them now, and we're just continuing. It's on a weekly basis. And we just talked about, don't be afraid to ask for help. Because there's a lot of stress going on out there right now. There's a lot, not just with the COVID and the pandemic, but all these things. And, that CEO has 13 therapists and counselors available for their people for the next 5 weeks. They get 5 weeks of therapy if they want it. And it's not just therapy, it's someone to talk to. And you know what? I do that too. I actually have a personal, not only coach, but almost like a therapist who I talk to, I work with. My wife and I, we go to a marriage counselor, not because we have a bad marriage, we have a good marriage, but I want a great marriage. So I'm out there, always seeking experts who can help me get better. And then I'd like to pass that on to others.
That is humility that blocks so many people, saying, hey, I've got something good. I want it great. I take feedback here. I have a marriage counselor. I have a therapist. I have a coach. I mean, an active humility that, hey, we don't know it all, and we need to keep getting better.
Yeah.
One question on your process here? You're traveling a fair bit, like I am, often at least. What do you do with these stand-up meetings and debriefs and that when you can't be there? Someone else lead them? How do you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't want to be the linchpin. Actually, I want my team to lead those meetings. And, to be straight with you, it's an evolving process, right? We're learning from each other. I like to be there on the morning and Fridays. These meetings are highly important. You don't miss them. Okay. We schedule around them. Okay. So I'm on those. And by the way, it's a great check-in. It's not just information that's exchanged. It's a leadership moment. Mm-hmm. You're connecting with your people, right? But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I let my team do that.
And they just check in. It's a how many minute? 10-minute check-in, 5-minute check-in. Here's the top goal of the day. How you're doing?
Yeah. It should be as short as possible. That's why I like in some companies call them stand-up meetings. So something you can do in a stand-up. So 5 to 10 minutes depends what's going on that day. But it's just an alignment process.
All right. Well, wow. A lot covered in a short time, which I knew would happen. Lots more we could ask. There's, I think, anything. What are you learning right now? We got a lot of people learn stuff in the past. But anything top of mind right now that you're keeping learning?
Well, what's really cool is I've got a mantra now that I say, or some core values. I wake up every morning and I say, learn, grow, and give. And then I realized I had the actual order wrong, David. It starts with giving. So you go give, learn, and grow. So I am absolutely in this pursuit of how do I give first? And to me, that's this give back right now, just being on your show. You and I share so much time together. We give to each other and we're giving to the people who are listening to this. So I want to give first. All right. Then I want to learn. I've learned from you, especially in our call before this, as we're talking about how things are going. Right. And I'm sharing. Right. And then I want to grow, and I want to grow in any way I can. So what we're learning and growing the most with right now is just what we talked about. How do you build a high performance team, right? And how do you take that team, which is not just the recruiting and the hiring process, how do you take that team to the next level? And that involves what we've been talking about, but I'm learning from other people every day. I learn from my clients every day. That's why I love to work with organizations, because every time, like I'm leaving on the airplane, like I said, in a few minutes, and this group, it's a consulting group, and they use the Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS. And I've heard about that before. And I said, oh, really? Tell me about that. And it's a lot of it is this structural piece that we're talking about here, because I think you need to have some structure and then trust, right? You need both. And when you have that, you get breakthrough performance. And that's why what you do, and I keep saying it because I'm not just pumping you up. I believe what you're doing is changing organizations and you're changing people's lives. And that's what we all want to do.
That's our hope, right? The mission, develop trusted leaders and organizations around the world. Well, that's a taste of John Foley. Before I give you the final question, John, tell us, where can we find more about you, also known as Gucci?
Gucci.
I didn't say it today much.
First off, if you want, depth of stuff, just go to my website, John Foley Inc., John Foley, inc.com. We just launched a new website. It's only been up for like a week and a half. So a lot of cool videos on there, a lot of cool stuff. The very first thing you could do is sign up for our content, right? And we put out not just a weekly connection, but actually I put out these really cool impact videos once a week. They're only about a minute and a half, but they're constantly on these themes. And so there's that's the number one way. Just be part of our community. Because just like you, we got constantly new information we're sharing. But then there's social, right? I got a whole social media team, marketing team. You can find me under John Gucci. By the way, Gucci's my call sign, Foley. And on the net, when you have me back, we can maybe talk about how I got that, which I can tell you I didn't pick and I didn't like it. That's why it stuck, right? Okay.
Of course.
But John Gucci Foley, of course, LinkedIn, and we're doing really cool stuff on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're actually on all the platforms, and it's very unique. So just become engaged. We're best way, any of that.
John Gucci Foley. Here we go. Hey, last question, my friend. We both have something we've got to be at, but we've got to finish this way because it's the Trusted Leader Show. Who is a leader you trust and why?
Well, it's simple. And I've heard you tell you this story too. It's my dad. Whenever I hear that, in fact, I get a little emotional because, you made me think of him. And, he's passed away. And that's okay, because we really, he gave me everything a child would want. He was the example of integrity. I didn't need to have a definition. Just looked at my dad. He was the example of love with my mom. They had, together, wisdom. If I ever wanted wisdom, heck, just go talk to my dad, It was really cool. And so it's so simple. And I always can fall back on that. And I had the rare privilege to be with him when he passed, with cancer and some stuff. And that was a real privilege to really get to know him both when he was strong and when he was challenged. And he was a leader in both those situations. So that's the go-to. It's my dad. I love him.
Nothing else to add to that. Hey, thank you for being on today. Thank you for sharing with our Trusted Leader audience. Thank you even more for being my friend. That's the Trusted Leader Show today. Until next time, stay trusted.